Welcome, Cheryl. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Jess. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Can you believe it's 10 years?
No.
I know, me neither.
I can't. I was just thinking this morning, I was remembering when we first met, when we filmed for the movie.
Yes.
And we were both younger then and, and newbies.
Well, you've always been so supportive and you've always been really enthusiastic. And especially when we started, no one knew who we were, but you saw that we had a passion for tapping and we could see that passion, that you had a similar passion. Can you tell us about the moment when you realized that you had found something that could make a significant difference in your life and in your work?
Yeah, I can totally remember the moment. I was sitting on an airplane with my husband, Michael, and we were flying cross country. And I was a very nervous flyer because in my early 20s, I had taken a trip with my parents to Las Vegas. And on our way back, we hit a freak storm and had a horrible flight. And we actually were really afraid we were going to crash. So I was really scared, and I hadn't flown in a long time. And so I didn't fly for like 5 or 6 years, and then I started flying. And when I met Michael, he and I were on a plane, and I was a white knuckle flyer up until the time that I met Michael. And we were on a plane together, flying cross country, and we hit turbulence, and it started to be pretty bumpy. And I got really scared. And Michael saw the blood drain from my face, and he's like, "Honey, what's going on?" And I said, "I don't like this turbulence, you know, I'm really scared." And I started to just feel that panicky feeling. He said to me, "Oh, we're just going to do some tapping." Just calm as could be. And we were sitting there. I didn't care who saw me. It didn't matter. Like I was ready to tap everything. And he just took me through this tapping sequence. And in 10 minutes, I went from like what felt like on the verge of a full panic attack to being completely calm and at ease. And I remember that as he took me through the sequence, you know, he would have me breathe, tune in, rate, you know, on the scale, and then he would say to me, "Okay, now, you know, notice any thoughts or feelings you have." And I remember the moment when I recognized that I wasn't afraid of flying, and I wasn't even afraid of the turbulence. I needed to tap on the anticipatory anxiety of the turbulence coming. And when I tapped on that, my fear went away, like literally went away. Right. And so from that point on, I mean, really, my career took off, metaphorically and literally, and I started flying all the time. And that's when I said, you know what, there's something really, really important about this, and I want to learn more.
Right.
And that was the beginning of it all.
Isn't it interesting that you started tapping and then you gained clarity as to what it really was?
Yes.
I think there's something really important about that. And I think as people listen to the Tapping World Summit, it's about being able to get that clarity with your tapping.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so much I want to say about that. I mean, first of all, the great thing about tapping is it's so forgiving that regardless of what's going on, if you just do the basic algorithm and you embrace whatever is going on, you're going to feel relief. So that's awesome, right? And then I find over the years, and I've been using tapping now for 20 years, really, I find over time that when you can really get to that nuanced language of what's going on, then you can really deal with the source of the problem and correct things very quickly. It's one of the things I love most about the Tapping World Summit is I listen to it every year. You know this. I always tell you, I tell Nick, I'm walking around my neighborhood listening to it. And what I love is that I learn all these techniques for getting to those specific reactions, thoughts, language that helps me to really kind of pinpoint, not only for me, but for the people I work with as well.
Right. So there you were with your first experience. And from that moment when you realized, okay, there's something really powerful about this technique, how did the journey continue? And when did you begin to feel comfortable sharing it with others?
Well, being able to suddenly fly, which opened the whole world up to me, was just, it was life-changing. I mean, it really was life-changing. And so I wanted to know, how the heck could I go from being terrified of flying to having the whole world open up to me in 10 minutes on a plane? I mean, like, who wouldn't want to know that? And, you know, I had seen things like that. I had originally been introduced to tapping through Roger Callahan's work, and I remember watching him on television one time, working with somebody who was terrified of snakes. And again, in 5 minutes, going from running out of the room, not wanting anything to do with the snake, to sitting, holding a snake in their lap. And I thought, wow, that's really great, but I don't know. So then when I had the experience with flying, I mean, honestly, Jess, I left that experience thinking, I want to use this more, and I want to help everybody I know who's struggling with different kinds of fears or concerns or whatever. Like, I just wanted to tell everybody about it, which a lot of us do, right?
Yeah.
We find something new that feels life-changing. We want people to know. So I started using it with family members. I remember one time I was with a family member, and we were at a restaurant in the city, and she just started feeling anxious. She was prone to anxiety. Something had happened. I don't remember what it was. But she was in the bathroom. She went to the bathroom, and she didn't come out for a while. And I remember thinking, that's strange. I wonder what's going on. And I went into the bathroom. She was having a panic attack. And she was really frightened. And I mean, I don't know if you've ever had a panic attack, but they're not pleasant at all. And so I started tapping with her in the bathroom. And again, she didn't care who was around. She's like just tapping away.
Because at that point, you just want relief.
You just want relief. And within 5 minutes, she went from full-blown panic attack to being totally present and calm. And again, I was just like, this is magic. I don't understand it. And that was early on. Now, of course, many years later, I understand that it's this beautiful kind of elegant interplay between energy and psychology, right? It's a dance between noticing what it is we're afraid of or stuck about or resistant to, or what kind of pain or issues we have in our body, noticing whatever it is we're experiencing that we don't want to experience and embracing it, and then using the energy system of the body based on the ancient acupuncture meridians, using the energy system of the body to allow us to begin releasing the blocks that are often kept in place by our resistance. And there's no better example of that than people who are afraid of public speaking. I just recently worked with a woman, this was such a powerful experience for me, who was not a professional public speaker, but had been invited to give a speech about expertise that she had around teaching. And she was a very experienced, accomplished teacher with a special population. And she had been asked to give a speech to her peers, about 200 peers. Now that's kind of scary, right? Because you're not just giving a speech to the general public, but to people that you wonder if, are they going to judge me? Are they going to be critiquing what I'm saying? And she was terrified. And so when I got on the phone with her, the first thing she said to me is, I can't believe I agreed to give this speech. I really don't want to do it. And I'm so mad at myself because I'm scared. I know this. I've been doing this for years. I shouldn't be afraid. Which immediately told me, okay, this is where the big block is first and foremost. Let's do some tapping on the fact that you can't be with being afraid. I said to her, you should be afraid. You're going to be up in front of 200 people, 200 of your peers. It's normal to be afraid. And so in doing the tapping around, even though I'm terrified to give this speech, I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself. Or even though I'm terrified to give this speech, I love and accept these feelings, which is really important. And then my favorite I use all the time is, even though I'm so afraid to give this speech, I choose to feel peaceful and calm. And I just kept doing that with her. And we would do the rounds, after I rated her on the scale and everything. And she went from, probably being around a 10 to being a 7. And then as we continued tapping, she really got in touch with the fact that she, as we were paying attention to the thoughts that occurred to her, she got in touch with the fact that it felt like this fear was really, really old. Great. Even though I have this fear that's really old, that's getting in the way of me giving this speech, I love and accept myself. I went through the whole thing. I choose to feel peaceful and calm. And also, I choose to be open to wisdom and insight about what's really going on. And what she identified.
Ooh, can you say that one more time?
Yes.
That was so good.
I use this a lot in tapping when we don't know what's going on. I'm doing it just as much as the person I'm tapping with. Even though I'm really scared to give this speech, and I feel like it's about something old, and I don't know what it is, I choose to be open to wisdom and insight. And I did several rounds. I'm open to wisdom and insight. I'm open now to learning more. I know this is old, but I don't know what it is. I'm open to learning. I'm open to divine wisdom and insight, that sort of thing. And she immediately taps into being held back in a grade when she was very young. And I actually get chills when I think about this experience, because what we realized in the tapping was she had chosen her profession partially based on her experience as a young woman, a young girl being held back in school. She had gone on to be an incredible teacher because of that experience. unconventional, loving, supportive to her students. And suddenly, as we went through the tapping, she realized, oh, wait a minute, I need to go back and accept and love that little girl. I need to, and I was able to say to her, you know, would you tell that little girl, you shouldn't be afraid. You should just like stay back. What's the big, you know, and she really connected with, no, I need to really love and accept this part of me that's afraid. And suddenly she went from being terrified to giving a speech to saying to me, I cannot wait to get in front of these people, to let them know what I've learned firsthand and practiced all my life. And it was life-changing for her. And the great thing about that, Jess, is, and this is why I love the tapping so much, it wasn't just about her giving the speech that night. I know that so many things in her life were now going to change as the result of her getting in touch with the original source of the pain, accepting and loving herself, fears and all, and then actually going and delivering the speech would just open doors for her that she just didn't even know were closed.
Right. And oftentimes when we're struggling with something, the last thing that we want to do is love and accept it. We just want to push it aside and ignore it or fight through it. So can you talk a little bit about this idea of claiming what we're scared of? Because especially if we also hear about the power of positive thinking, which I believe in. So how does this all fit together?
Yeah, so it's a really important question. You know, the simple answer to that is, when it comes to tapping, if you find yourself really resistant to say, even though I may never quit smoking, I love and accept myself, even if I gain another 100 pounds, I love, if you feel incredibly resistant to say that, you should be very excited. Because what that tells me is you've really got your finger on something that is really preventing you from moving forward. And so if it were me, I would be jumping at the opportunity to say, even though I might gain another 100 pounds, I love and accept myself. Because I know that's what's going to unlock the stuckness that you feel, or the fear that you feel, or the blocks that you have. So that said, I also, you know, am very empathetic. I say to people, okay, you don't have to believe it. Just tap with me anyway. I steal something from Louise Hay, where even though, instead of saying, even though I'm terrified of giving a speech, I love and accept myself, I might say, even though I'm terrified of giving a speech and I don't believe I'll ever be okay with it, I'm willing to learn to be open, or I'm willing to learn to accept myself. And that works just as well. It's kind of like a step before the, and I don't think I've ever had anybody who was resistant to saying something not be able to say it after using the willingness part.
Right.
And so in terms of positive psychology, when it comes to tapping, I always want to focus in first on, what are you resistant to? What are you afraid of? What don't you want to own? What can't you embrace? We do all our work around that. Then we lock in with the positive affirmations. So affirmations can work. You know, Louise used to always say to me, people say affirmations don't work, but it's usually because they stop doing them. I think affirmations plant important seeds, but they don't take the place of the deep healing work that needs to be done when we have sources of a problem, blocks and resistance that are in place for really important reasons. They kept us safe at some point early in our lives, and they need to be addressed. And tapping can be a great way to take the edge off, to take the overwhelm out of the equation, to take the sort of inconsolable nature of grief, let's say, out of the equation, so that you can do the deeper healing work.
Right. It's worth noting that it's a gentle process.
Yes.
Even though sometimes it can be intense when we're looking at things, it's incredibly comforting at the same time.
Yeah, and let me just say that whenever I'm dealing, like for example with this woman who was afraid of public speaking, I've done tapping a lot for fear of public speaking. It works so beautifully. I always say to people up front, and I think this is important for people who want to work with people or even share it with family and friends, I always say up front, listen, in the beginning, you might feel really uncomfortable, because the more we can bring up what you're really afraid about or what you're really resistant about, the better off we're going to be. But I promise you, by the end, you're going to feel better. So I condition them ahead of time, because I really do want to get them into that state, right? You know, I want, like, when I was working with this woman, I would say to her, okay, let's imagine you wake up in the morning and you're thinking about the speech, and you feel this pit in your stomach, and you can't even eat lunch because you know you have to give, and I walk her through, I paint the picture. You're getting close, you're driving to the venue, you know you need to give the speech, and like, I start to feel anxious, you know. I'm trying to really build up that anxiety so that we can just blow it out by the time we get to the tapping.
Right. And the physical aspect is really interesting, the way people begin to release not just the tension, but even physical pain. You were sharing a great story with me just yesterday when you tapped with someone who had, was it neck pain or back pain?
Yeah, she had upper back pain. And I had listened to the Tapping World Summit, and I pick up great, you know, Carol Look, Brad Gates, Dawson Church. I mean, I always pick up great tips from people. And I picked up a couple of things I'd never used before in tapping. And for this particular, it was a man that I was working with, actually. He had upper back pain. And so we did a few rounds of tapping to release the pain. Now, this man had had pain for several years. I mean, nonstop chronic pain for several years. And I honestly, I don't know about you, but you know, you sort of go into it and you think, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but what the hell, we'll give it a try. And I could feel that there was a lot of resistance to letting go of the pain. I could just feel it in my body. Like when I'm tapping, I find that tapping somehow opens a channel for me as the person doing the tapping with the person, where I'm able to really kind of have a sense of what's going on, and I could feel a lot of resistance. So we did a few rounds of tapping, and you know, he was quick to tell me, nope, it didn't work, the pain's still there, and I'm thinking, okay. And in my mind, I always say to myself, just let go of the outcome, let go of the outcome. And so I used a tip, somebody, I forget who it was, you might remember, about naming. So I asked him if he could give the pain a name, and instantly a name came to mind, and it was his father. I didn't know what I said to him. So do you know anybody by that name? He goes, yeah, and he kind of chuckled, and I love when people chuckle because I know we're on to something. And he said, yeah, it's my dad. And I said, oh, okay. So we started tapping on his dad being in his upper back. You know, even though my dad is in my upper back and he's causing me pain, I choose to release him now. Even though my dad is a pain in my back, I choose to release him now. And I went through all of these sort of, and first round, 25% of the pain is gone. Second round, 50% of the pain is gone. Third round, 75% of the pain is gone. And then there was the last, like, 20% of the pain that just was staying there. And instead of working hard to get rid of the last 20%, I just simply said to him, you know, your body has been holding this pain in a particular way. Your body has been holding itself in a particular way for quite some time. That pain will probably take a little while to dissipate once your body begins to relax. And sure enough, within a week, it's exactly what happened.
Wow.
So, and I mean, this man, talk about a convert. He's like, what the heck did you do? I said, I did nothing. It's called energy. You know, this is the future of medicine. As crazy as it sounds to people, I mean, I've been doing it long enough now, you know, people will say to me, God, how do you introduce people to tapping when it's so weird? And I say to them, this is going to be weird. This is going to be really crazy. I'm going to have you tapping places and you're going to think, what the hell is she doing? But just humor me, let's see if it works. And I've never had anybody say, no, I'm not doing it. I've just never done that because I'm totally comfortable with it being kooky.
Well, what's great about the examples that you shared too is that you showed us how the number was going down. So it wasn't a 10 to a 0 right away.
No,
you went from a 10 to a 7, and it's something to acknowledge, to celebrate, and to keep going.
Well, I will also say that by listening to the summits over the years and the different teachers who have been doing it a lot, and that's the thing, when you do it a lot, you learn a lot, right? I have learned to not look for quick fixes, to respect the body, to respect the history of the person you're working with, absolutely to respect the resistance, and to keep tapping, to just keep the rounds going. I know Dawson Church will do that a lot, where I'll see him just keep going and going and going, and being patient like that, because you never know. To me, it's exciting. Tapping is like a treasure hunt. I never know when something's going to pop up for somebody that is like, oh, that's the source of the problem here. Or, you know, let's see if we can really, I mean, this is life-changing stuff. This isn't just, you know, oh, I have a pain in my elbow and now the pain's gone. It's like, there's a reason that pain is there. And let's deal with that, but also let's teach you about the fact that you have a lot more control over your emotional, physical, and spiritual health than this medical system and the skepticism of many would have you believe. So to me, it's incredibly empowering in that way.
What advice would you have for someone who has a very specific change that they want to make and they've been feeling really stuck? You know, they feel like they've tried everything and it hasn't worked, and they're thinking about tapping, but it's new and they might feel a little unsure.
Tap anyway. Like I mean, so first of all, I would say that. Listen to the summit, tap along. I mean, I think, do you pretty much do tapping with everybody?
With everyone,
yeah. So everybody will lead people through. Listen and just humor yourself. I mean, what have you got to lose? I always say to people, if you're feeling stuck, your best thinking got you there. Chances are you're going to need the thinking of somebody else to get you out. Now, personally, if I'm really stuck with something, I might actually ask somebody to tap with me. I did that with Nick, your brother, when I had a car accident a few years ago. I was rear-ended by somebody completely unaware, and I did tapping. As a matter of fact, I'm at the accident scene. It was just not a pretty scene, and my sister showed up. My sister Carrie showed up, came running to the scene, and I was in shock because I had been hit really hard. And the first thing she said to me was, "Start tapping." And I remember thinking, oh my God. And I literally sat on the side of the road, like just doing this. Even though I'm in shock right now, or even though I can't believe what just happened, I started doing that, and it made a huge difference. Now I just completely lost my train of thought.
Well, you were saying that you still needed some extra support.
Yeah, so I had done tapping around it, but like, I don't know how many months went by, and I noticed one day, I was driving down the highway, and I did this, like I was afraid of somebody hit, and I thought, you know what? It is stuck in my energy field, and even though I know how to tap, and I've been tapping, I need help with this. And I called Nick and said, can you do some tapping with me on this? And I remember we had done the tapping, and it was interesting. This is what I mean about tapping being a treasure hunt. While we were doing the tapping on the accident, what came up was all this grief about Debbie Ford dying that I didn't even know. My friend Debbie Ford, some people may not know who she is, but she was just a beautiful, beautiful author. She wrote Dark Side of the Light Chasers, which was an amazing book, along with many others. And I remember being on the phone with Nick going, oh my God, like Debbie had died like 2 years earlier. I had no idea that there had been some kind of an energetic link made between that accident and her dying and my own mortality, because, you know, it was it just was a shock. It was out of the blue. And I remember thinking, you know, we need to reach out to others sometimes. So if you're feeling really, really stuck, the first best thing to do is to just listen. You've got nothing to lose. Listen to the summit. Bring in other people's wisdom and experience and tapping sequences. And then if you still feel stuck, reach out and find somebody that, you know, a professional who can help you do the tapping. And
I love the spirit that you approach it with, that when we begin to discover these things, that it's actually exciting. I think it almost means we're halfway there in the healing process.
I agree with you. I mean, I have to tell you, Jess, I no longer coach. I don't have a practice. I actually coach a handful of people pro bono, and it changes all the time. Tapping is one of the first things I use now because, you know, I've been around a long time, and I've got a lot of experience specifically working with people about getting unstuck. I mean, that's really, you know, good self-care and getting unstuck. And so it's been the body of my work. And tapping is one of the first things that I use now with people because I'm always excited. Like, I can't tell you how people will bring up something. I'll be at a party and somebody will talk about, or Michael, you know, my husband, who's just a great tapper as well. And I remember we were at a party together and a woman had just come back from Europe where she had had this mad love affair with somebody. And she just was like so thrilled. And the day of the party, she found out he was married. No. And she was devastated. And she happened to mention it at the party. And I remember it was a very funny experience because Michael and I were so into tapping, and we knew how it worked for love pain. And I said to her, oh my God, you should let Michael, you know, tap with you, which today I probably wouldn't say, you know, I'd have to be careful about how I say it. Anyway, he literally took her in another room, and they were gone for about a half an hour, and the party went on, and every now and then people would be like, you know, and she came out, she was like a different human being. And of course I was like, all right, what went on? Yeah. I was giving them a hard time. But she said, I can't believe that just a half an hour ago I was devastated. I thought my life was over. I thought I would never trust men again, never trust anybody again. And now I feel deeply saddened by what happened. and I'm really angry about it, and I'm going to let myself have my anger about it. But you know what? People are good people, and this is just a bad experience. And like, who wouldn't be excited about that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it works.
And we're doing something powerful here. We're also creating a new relationship with the way that we view ourselves and our emotions.
Yeah.
And can you talk a bit about that? As when someone has a tapping experience, we see the effect, we see the pain going away, we see them feeling more in control. But as they move forward, how do you find people begin to view their life differently?
Well, one of the things that I really love about tapping and the way that it's so integral to my work in self-care is that, and to me it's also really fascinating, and I'll understand this more as time goes on, it really is about loving and accepting ourselves. Now, you know, Andrew Weil, who wrote Spontaneous Healing many years ago, and a lot of the books that and research that looked at spontaneous remission were often related to people forgiving themselves, right? And remember, that's what we used to call it back then, like, I forgive myself, even though I have this illness. I mean, not that they said it like that, but there was a lot about acceptance. And to me, the process of tapping over time really seems to install in people the realization that it is about embracing all of us, the good and the bad, the light and the dark, the sadness and the happiness, the fear and the courage. It's about embracing all of ourselves as a way to set ourselves free. And, you know, that's what self-care is. It's about loving ourselves completely, fully, just as we are. But it's a journey. Like, there's nothing worse than hearing, oh, sweetheart, you just need to love yourself. When you're 100 pounds overweight and you feel like crap, right? Or you just need to love yourself when you're smoking and you have a family and you just feel like a crappy mother or a crappy father. Or, you know, you consistently have a lot of debt. I mean, you can't just say to somebody, you just need to love yourself as you are. Tapping takes somebody on that journey, because I think that not only are you saying, even though I'm afraid, even though I'm resistant, even though I do this or I feel this way, and you're sort of installing new neural programming, I love and accept myself anyway, but you're also energetically changing everything about the physiology in the body. You're changing your neurology, you know, the way your brain operates as well. And so you're systematically over time teaching yourself to love yourself in a deep and profound way. And that's why we need to keep using the tapping. That's why I so appreciate the summit gives you a variety of different ways to use the tapping and to learn about it, because ultimately, you know, what we're doing, I think, is we're creating physical health in the body by teaching people to embrace all of who they are and this human journey we're on, which is hard.
Right.
You know, we're here on this earth for a limited amount of time, and we spend so much of it beating ourselves up. And as I'm often fond of saying, if beating ourselves up worked, we'd all be thin, rich, and happy. It just doesn't work, and tapping teaches us the opposite of that, which is to love yourself even though you're just not thinking right or feeling well or, you know, physically doing okay.
And it has an incredible ripple effect. I think sometimes when we want to tap, yes, we want to help ourselves, but we also have family and friends that we want to support. And as we begin to do our own work, we are also beginning to break patterns that society has told us you have to push and suffer to make change. What we've learned from maybe our parents or our grandparents about how you're not allowed to feel certain ways. We're almost breaking these chains, and I think it has a ripple effect for future generations.
Well, I think two things about that. I want to go back to the woman I talked about who was afraid of public speaking, but I also want to say this. We are trained. We come from generations that believed you had to work hard to get anywhere. I think it's why people have such a hard time believing in it, because it can work very quickly. That's part of the paradigm shift that we're creating, is you don't have to struggle through a medical system, a search and destroy medical system, medical community. You don't have to struggle with years of pain or years of suffering. What if you can heal quickly? If we look at the body of research on remission, it's called, like, people go into instant remission or spontaneous remission. Why is that happening? And why can't we create that? And I think tapping is introducing us to the reality that we can. So there's that one piece of it, like, why not risk letting things be easy?
Right.
They may not always be.
Yeah.
I've done multiple tapping sessions with people who have real stuff going on that needs to be addressed, and the tapping just brings them to a place where they can do the deep healing work. And I'm a huge advocate of therapy and deep healing work. Always have been. I've done a lot of it myself. But sometimes it can be easy. And at the very least, you can take the edge off. In terms of the ripple effect, honestly, Jess, when I think about the woman who was giving the speech to the 200 colleagues about a new way of teaching that really supports children, I can't think of anything better to do than that, because when I'm tapping with her, I'm not just helping her to overcome her fear of public speaking. I'm preparing her to bring information to a population of people who are impacting the lives of hundreds, maybe thousands of children. That's the work I care about. So when I'm working with people, and a lot of the people I work with now are leaders who are impacting the lives of others. So I know that when I teach them tapping, when I use the tapping with them, I mean, I could tell you stories of people that you know, that many people know, who are in their car on the way to the office tapping and impacting the lives of thousands and maybe millions of people as a result of their willingness to try something new and crazy, and to risk letting things be easy, and to risk trying something that conventional medicine might say is a little nutty. But you know, listen, those of us who ride the edge need to stay on that edge, because we're the ones that are bringing in new ways of being in the world. And I don't know, there's nothing more exciting than that to me. And thank God I'm old enough now where I don't really care what people think. I just don't care.
What I love about what you're sharing is that you're working with someone, they're doing tapping for the first time, and then you find out from them, I was tapping by myself in the car.
Yes.
That's what I love about tapping, is that you introduce them to it. The summit introduces them to tapping, but then they can take this and use it on their own, and that's incredibly empowering.
And I've also had, employers that I've worked with who have said to me, I had an employee who had lost a loved one suddenly, and I took them into my office and I taught them the tapping. And I think, great, I mean, this is how we do it, right? This is how paradigms shift. One conversation at a time, one tapping session at a time, one crisis that is intervened upon at a time, and before you know it, there's a groundswell, and that's kind of what I imagine doing each time I'm working with somebody who's a leader who's influencing the lives of other people. And then sometimes it's just somebody who isn't. But why would you not share this incredible tool with someone when they're really struggling? I mean, I've been on an airplane. I don't know, I bet you've done this. I've been on planes before where babies are crying and you can see the mom and the dads and I literally will just sit there and tap for the baby or tap for the mother. Or I'll be in a grocery store and I'll just use one spot and I'll see a mother who's got a couple of kids who's, you can tell she's so embarrassed because the kids are acting up, and I'll just imagine sending them love and just do some tapping for them, because it's energy. So I know if I'm on a plane with a group of people, I am impacting the energy of this plane with my own energy. I know that to be a fact. I've surrogate tapped for people before with their permission. I've tapped for my cat. Usually I'm tapping for myself if I'm worried about my cat. My cat's fine, it's me, or Michael. I mean, Michael and I, all the time. When my dad died, I remember I didn't know he was dead yet. We were rushing to the hospital because he had coded, and I was just, nobody's prepared for that, even though my dad had been sick, and I literally couldn't breathe. Michael was driving, I was in the car, and the first thing he said to me was, tap, just start tapping. And I remember, honestly, Jess, I remember tapping and thinking, thank God, I'm so grateful for this, because I went from being literally unable to breathe to just being, we're gonna get there, we're gonna be okay. And I thought, how cool is that you've got something that you don't need anything for, you just need to be present for it, and you need to remember to do it.
So along the lines of that spirit of wanting to help others and wanting to share it with everyone, I mean, that is the spirit behind the Tapping World Summit. It's these 10 days, and it's free for these 10 days. Why do you think people should? Thank you. I love that, yes. Why do you think people should take the time? Because people are really busy. There's a lot going on. Why should they really commit to doing this?
Yeah, there is a lot going on, and God knows we're bombarded with so much to read and to do, and this course you could take or that thing you could do. But this is life-changing, and it's simple. And so I think whether you're somebody, I mean, listen, I'll do this. If you're somebody who really likes to help other people, do it for other people first. Because you'll get it yourself. And if you're somebody who feel stuck in a particular area where you think, you know, I've had money problems all my life, I've had weight problems all my life, I've tried everything, nothing works. Well, if you haven't tried tapping, you might actually discover that there was a simpler way all along that you just didn't know about. So I think it's important to know you don't have to take it all in. Like, you don't have to sit down and do 8 hours at a time. I go out for a walk for an hour and I listen to one talk. They're usually about an hour long, right?
Yeah.
A little under an hour. So who doesn't have an hour here or there? It's worth it at least once a day to take advantage of listening to one talk. And then, of course, I just think you're crazy to not buy the program because, I mean, I get it every year. I give it as gifts to people. I mean, I think, why not have that at your fingertips? Because it truly is life-changing, and it changes the lives of the people around you. So you might be an employer, great thing to learn for your employees. You might be in human resources, you'd be crazy to not be using this. If you're a therapist or a coach, or you're somebody who is, you know, in the helping professions, in the medical community. I mean, the other thing is, when you learn tapping as a caregiver or a health professional or someone who's providing a service, you take your work to a whole other level, and you make your work so much easier.
Yeah.
Because not only do you get results for the people you're working with very quickly, but you're able to give them a tool that they go home with. I mean, when I think about the doctors and the healthcare professionals that I've coached over the years who struggle with non-compliant patients, and the only reason they're non-compliant is nobody's dealing with the real problem, why wouldn't you want to share these tools with them? I mean, it would just make your life so much easier and really improve theirs. So if you're ready, I mean, here's the thing. I don't work hard to convince anybody of anything anymore. If you're miserable, if you're suffering, if you're stuck, if you're just fed up, if you're struggling because you feel like you've got the weight of potential on your shoulders and you can't realize it, then this might be your time. And if it is, you'll do the Tapping Summit. If it isn't, you'll find it at another point. That's really how it works. I just hope you find it sooner rather than later.
Well, we're so happy that we found you and that you're spending
thank
this
you,
time
honey.
with us. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, Jess. Thanks for inviting me. I always love talking about this with you.